Today we would like to welcome Chief Petty Officer First Class Retired Shirley Brown. Chief Brown was the coxswain of HMCS Chippewa for a 3-year term in the 1980s, the first female coxswain of a dryland naval reserve establishment in Canada. She joined the Naval Reserves in 1955 and served for 30 years, retiring in 1985. We also have Sailor Third Class Annetta Loss, a Marine technician, here to have a conversation with us about women in the Navy. Chief Brown, you joined the Naval Reserve on February 9th, 1955, at 21 years of age. What inspired you as a young woman in the 1950s to join the Navy?
Well, my dad was in the Air Force during the war, so there was military in the family. To be truthful, my girlfriend and I were talking about the military, and we both liked the Navy uniform. That's the reason that we came down to join Chippewa, but you shouldn't say that, I guess. But I felt it would be beneficial for any young person wanting to gain independence, accept responsibility with a degree of discipline, and above all, see Canada.
And how much of Canada did you see?
Well, both coasts, mainly Victoria in BC and Stadacona in Halifax. My pay writing experience was in the supply school at Ville-la-Salle, Quebec. And I went down there for several years, 2-week periods, accomplishing and finishing my trades training, and from then I became a support group to recruiting and CHIP's office, and we, with our training of instructional technique courses and leadership courses and petty officer of new entry RENs in Vancouver, it gave us some stability, and we were able to later on replace personal servicemen on holidays, and I did that a couple of times down in Halifax and Stadacona.
Wow. So the uniform not only looked good on you, but you performed well in the uniform. And clearly for a very long time too.
Well, it was funny, after I had put my hand on the Bible to swear to God and Queen for a 3-year period, I went home and I cried my eyes out, and I said to my mother, "I signed my life away. You phone down to Chippewa and get me out of this." Oh. And she paid no attention to me, of course.
Well, that was probably lucky for you.
Yeah. But in the 50s, we were doing the pay writing by, calculators. We didn't have it all up to date now that they do it. We had to do each individual personnel in Chippewa's pay writing, and we knew exactly what they were paid for, their ranks, etc. And on a monthly basis, we had to have their reports ready for them so that they could collect their wages.
And Estrie Loss, what inspired you to join the Navy?
Funny enough, the same reasons that Chief Brown talked about. Liking the look of the uniform, getting to travel across Canada, having cool experiences was really important to me. I didn't have any family ties to the military, unlike Chief Brown, but it seemed like a great way to do cool and interesting things, and that's what it's done so far. So I think that's probably not going to change throughout the years.
Wow, we sound like the most fashionable element. Yeah. I hope we keep that going. And Estrie Loss, have you traveled across Canada? Were you able to see much of Canada through the military?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I always brag about how I have friends in almost every province now because of joining the military and traveling. So it's been really great to see both oceans and to do lots of training in different places. So it's only opened up the world more.
Yeah. And Chief Brown, I saw you nodding along. Did you make a lot of friends throughout your career?
Yes, I did, very much so. And when I traveled quite a bit visiting relations in Edmonton and Calgary and Toronto, and so I would look up people that I knew in the Navy Reserve and kept in touch with them.
That's good. Chief Brown, I heard a story about you being unhappy with the accommodations for women in the East Coast. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, I was going down to relieve permanent force personnel on holidays, and of course messages were going back and forth between Chippewa and Stadacona, so they knew I was coming, and I arrived late, about 12 midnight, and arrived at the gate, and the commissioner approached me, and I told him who I was, and oh yeah, and you're in the lower deck accommodations. I said, no, I'm not. I'm a chief petty officer. I said, they've got a building of their own. It's a 3-story. I said, that's where I'm going. Oh no, you're not. So I was too tired to do anything that night, but the next day I went to the CO of Stadacona and I explained to him, you knew I was coming. There's no accommodations for my rank. I'm going home on the next plane. And so they put me up in the Holiday Inn for 2 weeks.
An upgrade.
Yeah. So the next time I went down, I made sure that they had the accommodations in the Chiefs and PO's building. All they did is put a divider up on the 3rd floor in the middle of the floor, so the Wrens were on one side and the men were on the other side, and that was fine because the canteen and everything was down on the lower level and everything, so it was very comfortable.
Oh, that's good.
But it was another mark on the wall for the women.
Yes, I could attest to that too, where you see older buildings that were primarily made for men, but then they try to fix and put in female accommodations just to accommodate the changing forces and all the women that are coming in.
Correct.
And you have some pictures here. I'd like to take them out and get some stories behind these photos. So I have this one here.
Oh, that's the one that's up there.
It's beautiful.
Can you tell me more about this photo? What year was this taken in?
I thought I'd like to have a picture in my uniform, and so I took it to a photography place. I think it was Walmart or something like that, and they took the picture. I was a leading Wren then, I think, yeah.
You've got some ribbons on your uniform too.
Yeah, well, this is my good conduct on CD. 12 years. No, I call it my good conduct, but it's a 12-year. And then you have the little pin on it after 22 years. And if I'd stayed in for 32, I would have had a second pin on there. But anyways, that's my decorations, and I handed them into the museum. I have the small ones that I wear on November 11th.
It's an honor to be part of the museum. How did that happen? How were you inducted into the Naval Museum of Manitoba?
Well, after retiring from the Wrens, I joined the Ex-Wrens Association, which is the wartime ones that came out of the war, and they didn't have any social life, so they formed Ex-Wrens Associations in all the capitals in all the provinces across Canada. And so that had been going on since about 1946. So they approached us in, they changed their information as to enrollment and allowed the ex-Wrens to join in 1990, and we were no sooner joining, and bang, we were on the executive. And I think I went around the executive 3 times. From 1991 to 2017.
Hey.
And then we had to close the books because our wartime Wrens were dying off on us. But they were wonderful, and to hear their stories, it was just wonderful.
Was that like a legion?
No, it was part of the Navy, and they used to have conventions every 4 years, and different ones took part. We went to Toronto for a convention. We went to Halifax for a convention in 1992, and then in what year was it? 1985. Let's see. No, it was not. It was 2011 when I was in the Ex-Rens Association, not with the Reserve Navy, and they sent a letter out to all the Ex-Ren associations, who wants the next convention, and we were a very small group, but we said we would do it if it was the last one, and we did it at the Civic Center, and we had over 500 people attend. Some of them with husbands, some with daughters, but some of them came in wheelchairs or whatever. And we had a couple from the States, and we had a couple that had moved over to England. So they all came, and we had a 3-day convention, and it was a very good success. And when we closed the books in 2017, because our wartime Wrens were dying off, we gave the museum $10,000. You'll notice our names up there. So the museum benefited by our Wrens.
That's awesome.
And the Ex-Rens.
Wow.
Do you have any friends that shared stories about what it was like to be a woman or to be a female during the wartime?
Yes. Actually, I showed you 2 gals that were honored with the British, Empire medals. And one gal was in the communications with the railway, and she was reading where the Navy in England had incorporated Wrens into their service, and she wondered why our Canadian Navy did not have any females. So she went on her holidays down to Ottawa to the Naval Department and wanted to speak to the head fellow. She didn't get his name, and apparently somebody intercepted her, one of the officers, and heard her story, and she said, I want to find out why the Canadian Navy is not enrolling females. And he said, I'll pass this on. And so she never heard anything, so the next year she did the very same thing, but she found out the name of the CO down there, and she traveled down to Ottawa and introduced herself to him and said, I'm in the wireless, she said, and there's so many females that could be so helpful in the Navy. And so he heard her stories, and May of that year, she got a message from them that they were now enrolling females into the Canadian Navy, and sent her a bouquet of flowers thanking her. So she was one of in the first group that went down for training, and she was a wireless throughout her naval career, and she was awarded the British Empire Medal.
It's so cool that she just took her the matterings into her own hands and just went for it.
Yes,
she
exactly.
wanted it done.
Yep.
Yeah, and she did it.
Yeah, it sounds like a common thread. Like the women back in the time, they saw something that wasn't right and they spoke about it, and they weren't fair or weren't scared, or maybe they were afraid, but they put that all aside just to say what they thought was right.
Well, when you think of the Navy, the war started in '39, and it took them till '42 to enroll females.
Yeah.
It was interesting, in 1984, we had a vessel called the Service. Did you ever hear about it?
I haven't.
Yeah. Well, evidently they had it for about 5 years, and they used to use it for training. And so one night, one Tuesday night, an all-female crew boarded the Service, and we invited the Lieutenant Governor and it was McGonigal at that time. And we took her up the river to the University of Manitoba and back, and it was an all-female crew. And she said, it is a pleasure to be a guest aboard HMCS Chippewa Patrol Boat Service on September 11th, 1984, where the first of all-female crew performed with confidence, intelligence, and skill. I was delighted to have the opportunity to speak to the members of the crew and learn of your experiences and ambitions. May I take this opportunity to extend my best wishes for continued service to your future endeavors. Sincerely, Pearl McGonigal, Lieutenant Governor, Province of Manitoba.
She sent you a letter. Wow. That's very cool.
And let's take a look at some other photos you have. So, this is the picture. Can you tell me about this photo?
1952.
That almost looks like a Freedom of the City.
Yeah, we were on parade for Battle of Atlantic, and we went to church, Holy Trinity Church, for the Battle of Atlantic. And we would march there and march back. And this is Shirley Weber was our CO at that time.
Another Shirley.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. This is Dorothy Moore. She was at the coronation of Queen Elizabeth. Oh, wow. There was several of the Chippewa people that were invited to England for that ceremony. But look at how many wrens there were. Have you got that many now?
Not as many.
No? Well, when I went into the Chiefs and POs Mess, it took me about 5 years to get my promotion of a petty officer and move into the Chiefs and POs Mess. I'm sure there was between 75 and 100 people in there.
Wow.
We had
only wrens in this photo here?
This is all wrens, yeah. It's all wrens, yeah.
That's awesome. Oh yeah, they're all wearing high heels.
Mm-hmm.
And what part of the city is this? Do you know what street that is?
We would go from here probably up Smith Street to Portage, along Portage, down Memorial Boulevard, and always had a service there at the memorial of the 3 women statues, which are still there, and then marched home.
And S3 Lost, did you participate in this past Freedom of the City March?
I did, yeah.
You did?
It was raining very heavily.
And it was raining, okay.
Yeah, but it was great. It was still very cool to march around the city with our rifles and bayonets. Did you march with rifles as well when you were doing
No, they didn't, but the wrens were the best marchers. Oh. But we occasionally had to march with other services, and we would get the pipers, and if they were ever close to us marching, you were out of step all the time because they had such a funny gait, you know, and we were hop-stepping and jumping, trying to keep in step with them, but enjoyed the company.
And I have another photo here of some wrens marching. This looks like it's in the Chippewa, old Chippewa building?
This is in the drill. That's Edith Williams. Excuse me, I showed you her pictures right there. There's her medals.
The former CO.
Yeah, and there's myself, Sheila Ferguson, Smale.
The uniform looks a little different than it does now. Were those shoes issued?
Oh yes, they were the most comfortable shoes ever.
Really?
Yes, they were new. Everything else wasn't. It was hand-me-down, so you had to get them altered if they were too long or whatever. But yeah, we had evening quarters, and we had a good complement of wrens.
So I know that you joined in 1955. Did you help out at all with the flood that happened in the 1950s?
No, just before I joined, the flood was in 1950, and I was still in high school. But I lived in St. James, and we were very close to the river, so we were out sandbagging for sure. but I know the ex-friends were here. You had to, when you're a reservist, you have to put in the back of your mind that you could be on call for emergency. And this is what one of my jobs as a coxswain had to delegate and inform and get in touch with all divisional officers, etc., and set up different things for them, and have your personnel report to Chippewa, etc. And even after I left the Navy, you're still on an emergency list if there was anything, any indication that there was a conflict.
Even after you stopped being a reservist?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And that sounds...
Not now. I'm,
Right.
I'm too old.
I'm sure you still could.
I'm 89.
But that sounds stressful. How did your loved ones feel about that? How did your parents feel about that?
It was very scary because I thought we were going to war when they started reading it, you know. And they brought us onto the parade square, and they opened the book and started reading. It's a requirement, I guess. And it made you realize just exactly what you were there for. I mean, there's a certain amount of social life in the Navy too, you know, and we had a curling club, and they had a rifle range and different things, so you could get involved, things that you wouldn't do in civilian life. Yeah. My mom was a widow at 39, and we became independent children, 2 boys and 2 girls, at a very young age, and I think that kind of carried forward in my naval experience and responsibility. Like, go down for new entry training in Cornwallis, and we went by train, and I was train sick, and we went across the Bay of Fundy, and I was seasick. And then they threw our bags and us in the back of these trucks, and like, it's the roads there are just like this, so I was car sick before I even got there. But 2 weeks and ready to come home, we were crying, we didn't want to come, we had such a good time. But that was my first experience outside Manitoba, traveling to entry training in Cornwallis. So it was quite an experience.
That's very brave.
You get there and you think, now who's going to do my washing? Oh, who's going to do my ironing? Oh, I guess that's me. And an inspection every morning of, you know, your room and your bed, and whether they could bounce a quarter off your
Did they actually bounce quarters?
They try it.
And S3 Loss, do you have any other second duties at Chippewa? I know that you ran a dragon boating team.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
It was really cool. You can join this year. We're trying to get it going again.
Oh, too weak. My arms are too weak. But I've seen it. I've been watching it, and it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's really great. We had some trouble actually finding women last year for the team, so we got a CIC officer from Army cadets to join, and then like an international racing dragon boat athlete who was in her 60s to join us as well. So it was really good. We ended up winning the Centennial competition, which was
wonderful.
Really cool, yeah. So we're hoping to keep that going at Chippewa.
It was a great progression. Members practiced with hockey sticks on a bunch of risers before they got real paddles and actually got into the water, and still beat all of the other Naval Reserve units.
I think it was the hockey sticks that helped us win.
Yeah.
Another thing that we had an opportunity to do during the winter, because we were in the classroom most of the time, so it was a relief. On a Friday night, we would get home from our work, get into our uniforms, go out to CFB, and they flew us in a Hercules out to Victoria, and the men would go aboard the ship, and we would sleep ashore and join them next morning, and they would do exercises up and down the coast, and we always went with the Naval Reserve from Port Arthur,
Oh, wow.
Thunder Bay. Yeah, and it was very interesting. I can remember coming up from the galley with my bacon and eggs, and I was walking along on the main deck, and all of a sudden a big wind came, and all of my whole breakfast went into the sea.
It was overboard.
And that was quite a don't do that anymore. And they used to have a swimming in the old barracks here, and they had a chap that used to teach swimming, and I couldn't swim, and I tried, and he just shook his head. He said, just be sure that your laces of your boots are loose when you're aboard a ship, so that if you go overboard, your boots will fall off. But, yeah.
How many days a week did you come to Chippewa when you were serving? Was it one training night a week, or were you here
one training night a week? Yes,
night.
Tuesday nights. They call us Tuesday night sailors. Yeah.
Well, in my 10 years at HMCS Chippewa, we have not had any member achieve the rank of Chief Petty Officer First Class. Can you tell us about how you were able to ascend the ranks and become a Chief Petty Officer First Class, especially as a woman in the 1980s?
Well, as I said, I went away 2 weeks training every summer for the 30 years, and that's to your advantage in your promotions. Once I completed my pay writing, I was a support group for recruiting and ship's office, etc. And so this is what happened, and you just progress in your duties. And of course, went away on courses, as I said, Petty Officer of New Entry Training, went on leadership courses, instructional technique courses. The coxswain course was 12 people. I was the only female in the class. And the weekend that we were free, I had a brother that lived in Sydney, Nova Scotia, so I thought I would fly up and visit them for the weekend and come back on the Sunday night to start classes Monday morning. And unfortunately, the fog rolled in on Sunday night, and there was no transportation, and I was AWOL. And so I never heard the last of it from the rest of the persons in the class. That's what happened.
I think that's every member's worst fear, going AWOL.
Yeah.
And what was the proudest moment in your career, Chief Brown?
Well, being the coxswain was a proud promotion. Being the first petty officer, second class, got you into the chiefs and PO's mess, which was quite a bit nicer than the men's mess. And it was kind of like a bar. They had a bar, you know, and it was 2-story, and you had the booths, and we all gathered there, and we had a jukebox, so they always played the jukebox after evening quarters, and some of the men would go over in the corner and play cards. But no, we had quite a few social functions. I had my mother's 80th birthday party in the Chiefs and PO's mess. Hired one of the bartenders to open the bar and had a music man. So we were able to do that.
And have any female military members during your career, have they complimented you or said that you were an inspiration to them?
Mainly the females, you know, and
what did that feel like?
well, it was kind of like when I was retiring, I did the march past with the whole ship's company, marching past and saluting. That was kind of interesting. But Yeah, I was proud of the Navy and what I was doing, and my learning, of course. It was altogether different from my civilian job. And of course, if I had kept the checks that I was getting from the Navy and put them in the bank, I would have had some money, but I didn't. I spent it.
On what?
Anyways.
And Estrie Loss, what is your proudest moment of your military career so far?
Oh, definitely winning the Centennial Dragon Boat competition,
Well, yes, of course.
Especially beating out all of the other units who didn't practice with hockey sticks. That was probably my proudest moment, especially because we had built the team from the ground up. A lot of members had no experience with it before, and I think you can attest to that too, is just seeing the teamwork of everybody working together and coming to practice, being consistent. That was a really proud moment for me, for sure.
I love marching.
Yeah,
I really did. I loved when we were out on the civilian or on our roadways, and our services at the Memorial Park were very good.
And Chief Brown, what advice would you give to the next generation of women sailors? You could share that with me. You could share that with Estrie Loss.
Well,
the secrets.
Just the same as what I explained, you know, that you become very independent and qualified, you know, to take charge if necessary, and always in the back of your mind that, you know, anything that you learn will be a credit to the Navy, especially if you were called up in emergency. And even the females are going aboard ships now. When I joined, there was very few trades that you could join. It was communications or administration, which is pay writing or admin. And now there's most of their branches are available for females now.
Yes.
Which is wonderful. That's another, you know, reason to make it available to females, presenting all these qualities for them to make a choice.
And Estrie Loss, can I ask, why do you think women should join the Canadian Armed Forces?
I think it's important to have all people in the forces. I think diversity of perspective is really important, and especially with what the forces are doing in terms of operations and going around the world, I think it's important to have a nuanced approach to a lot of these issues, and so having a diverse perspective in the forces, I think, is important to help solve really complex problems with dynamic solutions that take into account different perspectives. Yeah. I
agree.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for each other after doing this interview?
I have so many questions. Yeah. So you said you had family who were military?
Yes, my dad was in the Air Force during the war, and he joined the Air Force, took his training in Trenton, and they sent them to Halifax to board ships to go overseas, and they took 30 of them off the boat to put a band on. So my dad was one of them, so he had to go through medical again, and they discovered he had a heart murmur, so he never got overseas. Oh. So he was stationed in Wheatlands, Rivers, Manitoba, which is the motor transport of the Air Force. And the advantage was that he was able to come home on weekends, so that was nice. But he worked for Air Canada 3 months out of the Air Force, and was killed in an accident while working for Air Canada. So we were living in a wartime house at the time, and they were nice houses actually. But I did enjoy him coming home on weekends, and I got to shine his medals, his buttons on his uniform, and do his shoes. He quite enjoyed me polishing his shoes.
I wonder why.
And so that was good an experience for me when I got into the Navy. I know I tried to talk my brother into coming and joining, but he didn't want to cut his hair.
Oh.
So
Luckily, men don't have to cut their hair anymore. Well, thank you, Chief Brown, for coming today, sharing your experiences.
it was my pleasure.
Yeah, letting us know all about the history and some of the trailblazing that you've done. And thank you, Esther Loss, for sharing about your experiences and just what it's like to be a woman in the Navy today.
Well, I congratulate you both for being in the Navy, and I'm sure you're enjoying your commitment and the values that you're getting out of the Navy. I certainly enjoyed it, and I benefited from it, I believe, completely. And I encourage anyone that is interested to pursue it.